Sabic is the largest non-oil industrial company in the Middle East, covering 5 core industrial sectors. Sabic employs almost 16,000 people. But despite its size, the company never forgets that its most important asset is its people. Their health and their safety are paramount. Sabic takes its safety, health, and environmental responsibilities very seriously. This film describes how staff and visitors to Sabic sites can play their part in making sure that accidents don't happen. Sabic supplies the Gulf region with metal, basic chemicals, fertilizers, intermediates, polyolefins, PVC, and polyesters. These products flow out well beyond the Gulf region and into the international marketplace. They provide the world with the raw materials to manufacture synthetic rubbers, glue, paint, pharmaceuticals, and cosmetics. Sabic processes different raw materials and produces products that are very dangerous. Many are flammable, explosive, or highly toxic. Some are corrosive, and some of them can damage the environment. There are chemicals and gases so hazardous that they ignite when they come in contact with air or water. They can only be handled safely by trained staff using very specialized safety procedures. Not following the correct procedures and unfamiliarity with the safety regulations can have devastating consequences. Do not become a casualty. Sabic manufactures some very hazardous materials. No one wants to be injured. Make sure that you and your fellow workers understand the rules and that everyone gets home safely at the end of the working day. Think Sabic. Think safety. Entering the site. Before anyone enters a Sabic site, they must be registered with the plant security. And then they must watch this film or attend a safety orientation program. Then they will receive an ID card. When you enter a Sabic facility, the security man must be sure who you are. Carry your ID at all times. It will be checked when you leave as well. The next essential is to remove any potential sources of ignition. The guard will ask you to hand in cigarette lighter, cell phone, radio, DVD player, flammable liquids, etc. Sabic only allows smoking in designated areas. Lighters and ashtrays are provided by the company at the site. To summarize, everyone entering a Sabic site must register with the security department. First-time visitors must watch this film or have been briefed on safety. Prohibited items must be handed in. And smoking is only allowed in designated areas. Protective clothing and equipment. Wherever you go within a sabic site, you will see safety equipment, which has been placed so that it is conveniently close at hand if you need it. You should understand the symbols and what they mean. And before you start a job, look round and familiarize yourself with the safety equipment close to you. Before you start work, you must also be wearing the appropriate personal protective clothing and equipment to protect yourself from the hazards at work. The minimum is safety shoes, a safety helmet, safety glasses, earplugs or muff, and gloves. Certain areas, shown by hazard signs, cannot be entered without the special appropriate protective equipment. And some areas, such as chemical handling areas, require extra precautions or specialist personal protective equipment. If you need to use this equipment, don't try and learn about it on site. That is too late. Make sure you're familiar with it well in advance. And finally, height above the ground is potentially dangerous as well. If you're working at a height more than 2 meters up that does not have a platform and guardrail, then wear a full body harness. To summarize, get to know the hazard signs. Memorize where the safety equipment is. Make sure you wear appropriate personal protective clothing and equipment. And if you're working at height, wear a full body harness. Work permits. Access to plants within a site is controlled, and visitors must sign in and out. If you need to carry out any task inside the plant, then obtain the appropriate work permit from the authorized issuer. They're issued and received by authorized employees. You will be fully briefed on the work permit requirements and the precautions before you start. Listen carefully and ask if you are in any doubt. Always comply with the requirements and precautions stated on the work permits. Ensure that all electrical equipment related to the assigned job have been isolated and locked and tagged out. Ensure all valves on lines and equipment related to the assigned job are tagged out. Work permits should be posted at the work site, and workers must know its location and read it. Read and understand its requirements. Work which involves an open flame or which creates sparks carries the danger of fire and explosion. Ensure gas testing is done around the work site. All flammable and combustible material is removed. Fire extinguisher and pressurized fire hose is available. And a fire watch is stationed at the work site before starting the job. If your job involves working in a confined space, you must sign in and out at each entry. Sabic standards require periodic gas testing in a confined space. Equally important is ventilation that must be working. Follow all the precautions of hot work if hot work is to be carried out in the confined space. If your job involves excavation work, you must provide shoring or slope. Follow all the precautions of confined space if the depth is more than 1.2 meters. Red concrete and underground services signify extra special care in excavation. The area will normally have to be dug out by hand. If tools or equipment have to be used, great care must be taken to avoid damaging the underground services. To summarize, you must sign in and out on the attendance list as a visitor to the site, or obtain the appropriate work permit from the permit issuer. Know the lockout and tagout procedures. Comply with the work permit requirements and precautions stated on the work permits. Emergency procedures. Things sometimes go wrong. If your supervisor is nearby, let him know immediately. Otherwise, report the incident and ask for assistance by the fastest means. Every site has an emergency telephone number. It will be inside the emergency telephone box. And hoping an accident won't happen is not good enough. If you have noticed something wrong, report it and get it put right before an emergency develops. A basic knowledge of first aid is essential, if only to stop you making things worse. Remember, it may be you on the ground. However, if you are unsure, then leave well enough alone. To summarize, use the emergency phone if you sense something is wrong. Report any accident and learn basic knowledge of first aid. Evacuating the site. Industrial sites can be dangerous places, and everyone must know what to do if the alarm sounds. This will be practiced at regular intervals, but here are some reminders. Shut off all power tools and leave them. Don't try to take them with you. Go to the assembly area. And it's vital to know where it is before you need to use it in a real emergency. The wind will often carry toxic gases downwind from a fire. Moving crosswind or upwind of a fire will minimize this risk. If the siren sounds, shut off all power tools and leave them. Move briskly, but without running, to the assembly area. To summarize, when evacuating the site, remember, shut off all power tools and leave them. Go to the assembly area and wait for further instructions. Final words. This film has stressed the dangers of working in a modern industrial environment. So let us finish on a happier note. The day's work is over. The work site has been cleaned, and the permit receiver is satisfied with the job. And no one has been injured. There is one simple issue of more importance to Sabic than its performance targets or the return on its investments. If all workers report for duty in the morning,